Let's start things off fast, shall we? And let's talk about first, the fastest character in the game, Seele, with a 115, the highest base speed in Honkai Star Rail. And in Honkai Star Rail, Seele is a quantum element, single target unit DPS of the Hun class. You all know I give analogies for all of my characters to make it just a little bit more easy for you guys to absorb. Today I come to you as a fruit vendor, and my analogy for Seele really is like a banana. Very simple and effective to give you that daily dose of vitamin C, yet also very easy to use and everyone loves bananas. She just puts out some ridiculous numbers. You can probably see some medias of her hitting one of the highest damages in the game from previous CBTs already. One of her only drawbacks is that she's a hyper carry kind of character. These kind of characters generally require or want to have more resources from other team members, buffing them, having more of prioritization of gear. In terms, if you have best gear, you want to give it to Seele as soon as possible. Her hyper carry nature is actually because she has a passive that allows her to act again if she defeats a target, which means that she wants to defeat targets as often as possible. She hits once, she defeats the enemy unit, she attacks again, and let's say she doesn't kill the unit, she can just use her ultimate and immediately burst down the unit. And that is sort of like a optimal Seele rotation. Another bonus to this character is she's of a premium element. Currently there are 4 quantum elements in game. 3 of them are limited 5-star characters and 1 of them is a 4-star and more of an AoE. You can check out the 4-star tier list for more information on that character as well. I do think that this character is definitely S tier. If you're just starting out and you want to pick up Seele and you're thinking whether she's good or not, definitely a solid character that will carry you throughout most of the game. Next up we have Kafka. She's actually my favorite character by design and what drew me into Honkai Star Rail in the first place. I really like her English VA, it's so enchanting, very different from a lot of other English VAs out there. But let me know in the comments below your favorite characters as well too. Are they one of the characters on this list or maybe from another list? We'd really love to hear from you guys. But anyway, Kafka in Honkai Star Rail is a lightning unit that is of the Nihility class, which although is classified like mostly as a debuffer, you will come to realize as you get used to her kit or reading more into her kit, she's more of an AoE DPS unit rather than a pure debuffer as per classification. I'll explain more in like a little bit. But my analogy for Kafka really is like melons. And why melons, you might ask? Of course, because she's hard on the outside and she has very defensive traces, in terms of which she scales with like HP percentage traces and also has a damage reduction trace inbuilt into a kit when the opponents are inflicted with shock. She also has a follow-up attack in her kit, making her very effective to deal damage outside of her turn. And for those of you who are new to turn-based games, follow-up attacks are very effective because they actually increase the overall acting power of your character. She, in a sense, if you want to talk about debuffing, the only debuffing she does is really speeding up that damage over time element that the enemies are inflicted in. Other than that, you must think of a kit more of like an AoE DPS character rather than like a pure debuffing kind of character. One of the key downsides, in my opinion, of Kafka is that because she's of an AoE DPS class, she faces a lot of competition. For example, Jingyuan, who's also another 5-star lightning AoE DPS unit, is also released once the game goes live as well. You have to learn how to build Kafka to make her work much more properly. I've done another video for those of you Kafka mains who are interested. Do click on it and I'll definitely share really good tips for you guys to get a hit in Honkai Star Rail. But overall, I do think that my rating for Kafka will be an A+ tier. There's many other options for AoE DPS characters in the game, and although I really like this character quite a lot, but I do think that in terms of being objective, the possibility of this character getting a power crab is definitely high, and there are also many alternatives already exist, and that's what limiting her rating from going higher. But definitely a very solid character all around. Very good defensive stats, which also makes her not as squishy, especially when going up against harder content. Blade in Honkai Star Rail is a wind element AoE DPS unit of the Destruction class. My analogy for Blade definitely would be like a strawberry. Why do I say so? It's because I do think that although he's a really good fruit to be, but new players might find him a little bit squishy because his skill reduces the amount of health he has, and also his ultimate also reduces the amount of health that he has. He plays around with his HP bar quite a lot in terms of life stealing some, losing some, and new players might not be used to this varying HP bar as much as other characters on this list. He scales off with max HP though, and also attack, which makes experienced players really able to utilize his kit much better because he's actually not very squishy when you get his timings correct. He has very solid independence because of his self-sustaining kind of class, and compared to other characters like Arlen, who really need some shielding as he likes to be at low life, Blade doesn't care whether he's at low life or at full life. He scales off the amount of damage based on his max health, and that makes him a very versatile character of the destruction class. Strong damage multipliers, and I'll definitely rate him as A+ tier. A very solid AoE DPS character. What's stopping him from going higher definitely is because it's a very popular class to be in already as an AoE damage dealer, and considering that he's a premium character in terms of you have to pay premium currency to get him, I am more stricter in terms of my rankings for the 5-star limited tier list compared to the other tier list. So don't see like this tier list and another tier list and see, oh, both are A+, so they are same. It's not really the case. I do factor in the additional element of being a premium character and possibly having to spend amount of money for this character. I want to be objective and tell you the best information I can. That's why I overlay a lot of this information with thoughts versus other characters as well as monetary value as well. And next up we have Luocha. Luocha and Blade are like buddies because they combo very well with each other, and I'll talk a bit more about this in a little bit. Luocha is an imaginary character, one of two only imaginary characters in the game, and is of the abundant class, or healer as most of you might know it as. The best analogy I have for Luocha is like a ruby Roman grapes. Not ordinary grapes, but very, very nice, tasty grapes from Japan. Very expensive as well. I'll explain why this analogy in just a little bit. So he's a very rare element in terms of imaginary only being 2. The other one is a 5-star standard who is Welt, as most of you might know. Compared to Natasha and Bailu, he definitely offers a much more offensive healing kit in nature. And in a sense, because your characters need to attack in order to get that lifesteal quote-unquote healing, so to speak. Why I say he works very well with Blade and they synergize very well together is because he has an auto heal function whenever a character drops below a certain percentage of their life. When Blade uses his skill, he loses that life and Luocha can simply just heal him up. Of course, it works beyond Blade, and any single unit that drops below, he definitely can heal them too. But one important thing to note, it does enter a cooldown as well. Another side thing that is pretty good about him, he also dispels in terms of an AoE one enemy buff with his ultimate. He also can't be one-shotted, and that is something that I'm interested to try more, especially when I do more in-depth character guides, and it maybe definitely could be abused, especially if you don't build him for max HP items at all, but we will test things out when we get the opportunity, definitely. And the biggest question that I have, or some of you might be asking right now, is why not just buy regular grapes instead of expensive Japanese variations of these grapes? And that is exactly the point of this rating, and I definitely will rate him as an A tier for this very reason. For now, I do not see a significant amount of value in having a 5-star limited healer, and it's very important that we consider that we are spending potentially maybe hundreds of dollars for a limited character. You might need 2 healers in Memory of Chaos, but you could always run Natasha on one side, and maybe if you get Bailu, or perhaps you have a very good shielding team as well on the other half. I do not think that his kit justifies a limited pool, and I rate him A tier as a result. His A tier rating is definitely for investment value for the future as well, but in the near term I don't see him as being significantly better with Natasha. Jingyuan in Honkai Star Rail is a lightning element erudition class, AoE DPS more or less. And my best analogy for Jingyuan definitely would be a durian. He's a king of all fruits in some sense. Some of you who have tried this fruit before know that you either love it a lot or you absolutely hate it because of its very pungent smell. And that's exactly what Jingyuan's kit really is like in general. He's a hyper carry, very similar to Seele as well, in a sense where he builds off stacks in terms of the Lightning Lord passive that he has, and he really likes to be the one who gets all the buff from teams and the highest investment of the entire roster. He has very solid multipliers, especially if the new changes to him can hit up some massive amounts of damage with his very high base stats as well as HP stats as well. Very solid character overall in terms of his overkit. If you are worried about damage, you definitely have a very solid AoE DPS unit with Jingyuan. But of course, the two major downsides for this character is that he's competing already in a very crowded category, and he's also not very flexible character, being a hyper carry role in a sense. If we can compare Jingyuan real quick with Seele, who although are in different categories, their states are very different. Seele is best in class as well as she has ability to continuously act again, making her significantly different from the other units of her category. Jingyuan, on the other hand, has damage, and damage is all he has. In a sense, there are many alternatives of other characters who are much more flexible, and I do think that flexibility should be taken into account quite significantly, especially early on into the game when people are still trying to figure out their favorite team comps and being able to cope with the changing memory of chaos or challenges that is thrown to them. Because of the lack of flexibility, as well as his hyper carry role in nature, which requires a lot of resources, I do rate him as an A tier. I really wanted to talk about this character for a really long time. Silver Wolf is a quantum element by nature, and in terms of her classification, she's a nihility class or a debuffer class. She's really a pure debuffer in terms of a debuffing and utility character as well. My best analogy for this character is really like an apple. For free to play, an apple a day really keeps the doctor away, and let's talk a bit about why. Her kit is absolutely broken. This unit that we see here is actually a wind element monster, which shouldn't be weak to wind, but her kit works that based on the team's composition of the elements you have on your team, you are able to drop a weakness on the enemy using her skill, not even ultimate, just her normal skill, to implant a weakness, as you can see here, and I implanted wind because I had perhaps Bronya or Danheng in the other composition as well. Now this is very broken. Why? Because you can actually run a duo team in terms of like 2 fire, 2 quantum, or maybe even like 3 fire characters, 1 quantum, and you are able to consistently drop either quantum weakness or fire weakness on the enemy. Not only that, you could also play a pure quantum team with Seele. It'll be really solid in terms of always being able to drop quantum. And another reason why she's very broken because of a pure quantum team is this relic set right here after it got reworked. When the enemy is inflicted with a quantum weakness, you ignore 25% defense. And if you had a pure quantum team, you have a 100% chance of dropping the quantum weakness in any character that you fight or any enemy that you fight, which means that your whole team has a quantum weakness defense ignore on top of that quantum damage. Absolutely efficient character to farm. You can just farm 1 domain, play 1 element, and you will be able to do a lot with this character. I'll be going more in depth in the other relic sets as well after this video, and those of you who are interested in more in-depth gameplay already, you can follow me onto that video later on. I actually thought about this for a really long time. 3 weeks ago, even before the closed beta test 3 came about, I already kinda like cemented it in the writing. I do think that this character is my top pick going into the official launch. Simply too broken because of the amount of resources she saved. She compressed a 7x7 grid into a 1x7 grid in terms of permutations and combinations the game can throw at you. Of course, she's middle of the park for whales. If you have every single character, every single element all maxed out, then her utility saving doesn't really make much sense, especially if you are like a super wealthy person that can throw money. But for a majority of people, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. And with that, I invite you to the second part of my tier list video, which is on the standard 5 stars. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video.